Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an NPC bodybuilder. Today's guest is Patrick Davis. Patrick, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, for sure, man. So I'm really looking forward to chopping it up with you. I've got a couple questions I like to kind of ask all of my guests just to kind of get the conversational ball rolling, so to speak. So the first question, Patrick, I have for you is, who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
Okay, so my first answer here is definitely going to have to be Dorian Yates. So, for anyone who's not already familiar, with my trajectory, and most probably aren't, I actually started in classic physique as a natural competitor. I was actually more from an athlete background and somewhat averse to bodybuilding, ironically. I was more into kind of sports and training heavy, and I thought it was kind of this, goofy, like niche thing. But, I did love the weight training side of football. And so I, basically didn't have anywhere else to go once all that was done. And so bodybuilding just became kind of an attractive landing point. But at this time, I'm still training naturally. I do classic physique. And then as things kind of progress and I dive into the sport a little bit, I start to realize that, classic weight cap is not really going to be too realistic for me. And so I actually tried men's physique first, just because there was no weight cap. It was still more of kind of the look that I had in mind that I was chasing. I wasn't really attracted to the idea of myself being this, chasing the mass monster ideal. And then I saw, I can't remember. I think it's Generation Iron made the biopic on Dorian Yates. So it's not Blood and Guts. It was kind of a newer film on him. And I saw it in high definition and really got to see the grain and the detail for the first time, because, I think most fans of the sport understand, he's not the pinnacle of aesthetics, front lat spread aside, but he just has this crazy hard grainy condition. And just hearing him talk about it, he was like, I don't, want to have a good physique. I want people to be like, what the fuck? And something about that spoke to me. And I think his training intensity too, because I told you that was more my background. And I'd even found myself in a situation where, like, for example, in my last prep for men's physique, I did North Americans in 2020. And like late in the prep, I just love throwing weight. That's kind of why I started this thing, before bodybuilding. I just love to train. And, even in that prep, it was like, don't squat. Your legs are getting too big, or you got too much glutes or whatever, it looks silly in your division. And I was just like not wanting to limit myself with how hard I was training. Or, I felt like I was only a year into my bodybuilding career when I did my men's physique show, and already kind of fighting to downsize. And I was just like, why am I really doing this? And I wanted to look good and have shape, but I kind of liked Dorian's attitude of like, fuck finesse. He just kind of went out there, like I said, not the most artistic posing. He just stepped into it and it just didn't matter. So he's someone who, not only his physique, but really his mind kind of changed the way I approach the sport, and just helped me relate to it a little better. And then from a pure, just appearance perspective, I would say Flex Wheeler, like that to me is like the most perfect ideal of a physique all time. For current guys, really like Andrew Jacked right now. That's someone that I would definitely love to kind of move towards looking like that. But that's really about it. I'm a bit of an outsider to the sport still. I know as much as anybody who's competed for a few years would, but I wouldn't say that I was too much into the history of it or anything like that before I really started competing. And then I try to keep my focus more, just on whatever I'm doing in the gym, my program, whatever's coming from coach, and just kind of, I don't get too involved in the study of the sport, the history, stuff like that. Maybe not as much as I should, but.
Very cool, man. All right. So at what age, Patrick, did you start lifting weights? And then why did you start lifting weights at that specific age? I'm assuming probably for sport, but at what age did you start?
So I was very fortunate. I had some older cousins who kind of set the path, and I think most other competitors I talked to, the ones who got started earlier usually started, like 17 to 20 or something like that. So I actually started getting dropped off at the gym when I was 12. And it was super basic stuff. I was doing like Smith machine bench press, cable lat pull downs, all these sorts of things. But, I just kind of heard about my cousins and maybe some older kids playing football at other schools, like they bench this and they bench that. And just instantly I was just like, oh, that's cool. I want to go try that. And at the time, I love to play sports, but I just was not very good. I was very short, very small. I had glasses and braces and all that stuff. And, I saw myself as being a strong person. We do like this is funny, but we would do like what do you call it? Where they do like the pacer test and the push-ups and all that stuff when you're in like elementary school. And I wasn't very good at most of them, but whenever we do push-ups, like kids were dropping at like 20 and 30, and I could just do like 80 something, and I was like a really little kid. So I just kind of had this intuition that, maybe if I go lift some weights, like I might be stronger, and I think I am. And it was guided towards sports as well. I always wanted to be good at basketball. Genetically and just skill set wise didn't really end up being my thing, but football kind of came up. I could run pretty fast, and at the time I was still small, but I was like, maybe if I put some muscle on and get strong, I might do all right. And so we had a like a summer lifting camp between 7th and 8th grade, and that was kind of my first time lifting in the mix of other people, and I was nervous but excited to see kind of how I stood next to these kind of premier athletes at our school and other schools, because we had several schools playing on one team. And when I got there, I guess I've been doing it for a while, and all these kids that that were better than me at the sport, we get on bench and squat and doing all this stuff, and I'm just destroying these kids. And all of a sudden the coaches are like, oh, shit, this little nerd's kind of strong, And so I think I was like 3rd string defensive back and like the 5th string running back in 7th grade, and then in 8th grade I was starting at nose guard, like front and center on the defensive line, and so that kind of built confidence and, got me excited. And so, and I really viewed the weight training as the key to what got me there. And so I think I got hooked on that. And by the time I got done playing ball, I think I was honestly more into the lifting and stuff like that than I was even into the sport. But, after a while, you just live for no purpose. It's like you need that competitive outlet. Like you need a reason to pull you in there. And that's where, I'd say that's where bodybuilding came in. First, it was actually like the, how do I say, kind of like the aesthetic, like, people who would do like Gymshark and stuff like that. Like I remember it was like Jeff Side and Zach Ainsley and people like that coming up on Instagram. And so that's more what I wanted to look like at that point in time, and I don't know, just 100 pounds later, just step by step, it just became a completely different journey. So.
And we're gonna get into that journey here in a few minutes. But before we do, Patrick, I kind of want to get a little bit more of a snapshot. If you want to paint the picture a little bit more of your childhood. So talk about like where you actually grew up. You mentioned playing football. Did you play other sports? Touch on maybe family dynamics, any siblings. Just talk a little bit about that childhood. Any other influences, maybe coaches, teachers that were influential in your life up to about high school, and then we'll go from there.
Up to high school, I mean, I think I covered it pretty well up to high school. I was sort of different in my family, just like athletics wasn't necessarily the point of emphasis, in my house. It was more kind of academically driven, and I did well at all that stuff, and that probably was more my focus, but I didn't find that as fascinating as the idea of, being huge. Like honestly, it's so funny to think now, but like, every day when I used to shower when I was younger, I would like dream about like and visualize like what I'd look like when I was older and when I got the glasses and the braces off and all that stuff. And I would just picture myself, being big. So I think young me would be pretty proud of how it turned out. And I'll be honest, I'm sitting about 270 right now, and I don't think even as recently as maybe 3 or 4 years ago that was ever part of the plan. It just kind of worked out that way. But yeah, I think aside from football, just, like I said, it was like, I did well in school, but I had, I love basketball. That was my first love for sure. And that was just not, my best skill set. I was all right, but I always wanted to like be, the best or be good or be kind of like, the top dude. And just that wasn't really happening in ball sports. Football got close, I was like team captain and stuff like that, but still not, it's like, I want to be the guy getting the ball the most and doing all this stuff. Looking back, I'm not sure if team sports was the best outlet for me. I did do track as well. I actually did that in college for a little bit. I went to Virginia Military Institute for 3 years, and I was on the track team just for a semester, but I made the team as a sprinter. I wasn't really planning on doing it when I went to college, but I can at least, say I have that little notch in my belt. I was a D1 sprinter for like, 2 months. So, but that's about it on that background.
Okay. So, what were you thinking about? You're playing sports and stuff, and academics was a pretty big focus with your family. What were you thinking about in terms of when you grew up? What did you want to do career wise? What did you go to college to study?
Man, I was like probably on, it's funny. I did so well in class. Like I was, I went to a fairly, prestigious high school academically speaking. And, I was the only national merit finalist. I had great grades. School was pretty effortless. And because of that, I don't think I ever really put a whole lot of thought into it outside that. I thought you just walk into class and get 100 and go home and, smoke or, do whatever, So I wasn't really like appreciating it or taking it serious, I don't think. And, you know, all I really saw was what was in front of me, the class and stuff like that. And so I think by the time I got to college, I kind of realized that I had no clue what the hell I wanted to actually do with my life. And, I enrolled in mechanical engineering, but then I was like, I hate all these classes. This is boring. And then I got into psychology, which was fun to learn about, but it's like, no offense to anyone with a psych degree, but it's like, what the fuck do I do with this? How do I turn this into money? Unless I want to go to school for, another 10 years or whatever. And then, I was at the military school and just kind of going through, I think I was looking at like law school and stuff like that at that point in time. Just because I had kind of a liberal arts degree, good grades. I was like, I figured, studying for LSAT was going to make sense. But so I mentioned earlier, I went to VMI, it's a military school, and I got in trouble for like a little fight. And so I got put on what they call like barracks confinement. It's like you're not allowed to leave campus. And so I got put on that for a semester actually. So towards the end of the semester, I got a little antsy and took a little trek off campus and got popped and sent home. So what was it? Texas A&M. So I apply over there. I get in. I have like 100 hours, good grades. So I'm like, okay, it's nice and easy. And what I did for any other college student wasn't bad. I walked into a party. But at the military school, it gets you expelled, but they'll kind of back you up, explain to other schools that you're applying to. Like they'll write you a rec letter if they expel you. They'll be like, look, this is not, he didn't go do some crazy shit. He just, we have tighter rules than usual. And, he didn't follow them. And so I got into A&M, no problem. But once I got down there, they took my credit hours. They accepted me with 100, and then I go to the new student conference and they hand me my schedule and it says I have 24 completed hours in my curriculum. And I'm looking at it and they put, I think it was 86 hours as free electives. So they're like, oh, you took, world history, not Texas history. So that's elective. Your chemistry wasn't calc based. That's elective. Your calc was lab based, et cetera, et cetera. And so they just whittled down my schedule to where I was basically like, half a freshman after having been a senior and succeeded. And at that point in time, my parents divorced the prior summer and just my structure got a little uprooted. And so just, it wasn't necessarily sudden, but I just kind of slipped into like drugs, and stuff like that. And just didn't know what to do. Didn't feel like starting over. And I think I made it like a semester and a half at college and just stopped showing up and got like a 0 point something. Like I was so bad at this point in time. All I had to do was like drop out and disenroll like before like the last 3 weeks of the semester or something. And they wouldn't count it against my GPA. And I just like forgot to do it. So I just took like a 0 point whatever. And at that point, the writing was on the wall. It's like, you got to go home. So I kind of just like fucked around for a little bit and just, stayed on drugs and just wasn't really doing shit with my life and was kind of in and out of some odd jobs. And, I was 24, actually. I ended up overdosing. And, I was doing cocaine at the time and you can really like, it's weird. Even when you're overdosing, it's a strong stimulant. And so it makes you quite sharp. And so I actually had this like pretty high quality discourse with myself as I'm going through this thing. And, the one thing that kept sticking out to me was like, man, if I die, it's just a shame. I had a lot of potential at a lot of shit. Like it'd just be a shame I never made it into anything. And so, I ended up surviving and the academic door had kind of closed. And so I'm sitting here looking like what's left. And, even during the years of drug abuse, I was really intense in the gym. Like, I wasn't that big, but I was probably like between like 195 and like 215, but quite lean. I had abs year round, quad splits, all that stuff, and still drug free at the time. I trained like an animal because I just, it's sad to say, but just kind of take some bars and go to the gym and sit there for like 3 hours and just work out, and I wasn't eating a lot. So I was pretty lean. But so that was at the time just like the best skill set that I had, to make something of. And so I was like, fuck it, like let's go in on it. And so I started personal training people, and I think I did my first show I guess after the overdose, it was about like a year and 3 months post OD. I did my first show. So I bulked until about December of 2018. And then 2019, I just started kind of getting in shape. And then about, I think it was March or April, I started cutting down. But it was kind of funny because at the time, bodybuilding was just something that I'd heard of and seen. Like, I didn't know a single NPC bodybuilder. I'd never met one. I'd never been an IFBB pro, nothing. And so, like, I didn't know shit about how to diet. Well, I knew macros and, basically just all I knew was gradually increase cardio, gradually decrease food. And so I, was even doing stuff like, I eat a lot of like dirty food to grow because, I was a skinny guy. And so like I'd be eating like pancakes all the time and shit like that. And it was like the first couple weeks of prep, it'd be like I stopped throwing syrup on it. And then I stopped throwing butter on it, and it was pretty loose until about a month out. I just like started counting macros at least, and so it was still kind of a loose diet, but I tried to, quote unquote carb cycle and just fit macros, but I wasn't really eating the same thing day in and day out. And, somehow, some way, when I look back at it for not knowing any coaches or athletes or anything like that, I think I looked pretty good at the first show I did. I got second in Open Classic. And I got taught how to pose by I did end up meeting one bodybuilder. It was a female who had competed in physique once. And she taught me how to pose. And so like, no lie, like I'm pretty sure I hit my side try like a girl, but that aside, still placed quite well. I qualified on my first trip, and so, and I think too, I remember I had a lot of, I think partially just from all the shit I'd gone through for the last few years, like once the show started approaching, I started worrying like I'm going to be nervous on stage and all this stuff. And that was like my one apprehension, I was just like, man, I don't know if I can do that. But when I went up there the first time, I was just like, if the crowd's stressing you out, I was like, just look at the judges, just try not to acknowledge them or whatever. And just like, I don't know, I went up there and it happened so fast and I just got through it. And then I was like, shit, that was actually pretty fun. I felt pretty good. I think I want to do that again. And, 3 years later, it's pretty much, all that's left of me. And I'm sure you've heard that before from some people on here, but it's, definitely the center point of my life. It's my biggest hobby and it's what I do for a living. I coach as well as compete now. And I've gotten a lot of joy out of that and really, sharing my love for the sport, but also, I mentioned I went through some pretty hard times in my youth. And I think it's, and even early adulthood. And I think bodybuilding is this really great vehicle for, maybe young males or females who haven't given themselves the chance to succeed that they want to have. It's a really good tool to just apply hard work and see that like step-by-step commitment to working hard, with small daily changes manifest in very large changes. And I think that's something I was able to take away from bodybuilding and apply to my career. I'm not rich or anything crazy like that, but I've had spells of making money that I never thought I'd be able to make, especially doing what I do now. And I owe a lot of that to the sport. So it's definitely deeper, than getting on stage for me now. It's something that I can honestly look and say, saved my life. I quit drinking alcohol during my first prep and haven't had a sip since. I wouldn't peak with the shit, and, I still smoke weed, but like pretty much everything else besides that, I'm drug-free, alcohol-free, pretty square, pretty boring nowadays. And, if you knew me in my early 20s, that's unthinkable. So I owe this game a lot for sure.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you kind of keeping it real with us and sharing that stuff, because that's really the heart that I have for the podcast is, we see all you guys that are great athletes, great coaches on Instagram, and Instagram is a very small part of reality. A lot of times Instagram's not even reality. So it's really cool to kind of peel back some of those layers. So, all right, I want to transition then into kind of like the bodybuilding talk, Patrick. Now, your first competition, was it classic physique or men's physique?
It was classic.
Okay. So then after that first competition, what unfolded from there? Because it sounds like you haven't competed that much, honestly, right?
Yeah, not too much. Well, so I ended up, I dropped my first nationals prep because I basically, I told you I competed naturally. And I was like, I'm going to get on stuff if I'm going to go do nationals. And so I started and I was 16 pounds under my weight cap. When I competed, it was 212. They fucked me over and gave me 5'11" and 7/8 or whatever. So I got 212. But I was 16 pounds underweight, so I didn't care at the time. But, I start prepping for nationals and I think I started prep at like 218 because I rebounded, I put some weight on, and then I started doing my stuff and get on prep with a coach for the first time. And it was just like, it felt like every week I was just 218. Like, and I was getting leaner, but that weight, the scale just wouldn't budge. And then, we introduced most of all that stuff pretty late. And then it just, and then the scale starts going up. And I'm sitting like closer to 230 all of a sudden and getting really close. And, you know, I made some other mistakes, stuff I wasn't aware of. Like, I'd never really dealt with like the hunger and stuff like that before. So like I was actually drinking like 1.5 grams of caffeine a day, stuff like that, just trying to, you know, stay on my feet and stuff like that. And then the other thing I was doing was I was putting way too much like salt and hot sauce on stuff. And so just the combination of the vasoconstrictors and all the sodium, I started actually getting pretty bad peripheral edema, like waist down. Just my legs and my feet just looked like shit. And I didn't know at the time that it was a very preventable mistake. It was basically the salt, honestly, salt and caffeine. But I just started, it was my first time doing all that stuff. And so it's like, I'm a complete hypochondriac. Like, I'm thumbing through my hair every single time I look in the mirror, get out of the shower. I'm feeling my nipples all the time and like just kind of, overthinking some shit. And so, when the peripheral edema started happening, I was already on pretty high alert. And then I actually, it's the strangest thing. I couldn't quite explain it, but I mentioned I had a previous overdose, and it was like a stroke kind of. And I was doing stairs one day, and I started feeling like there was just like a knife in my eye, and I didn't know what was going on. At first, it felt like there was just something in my eye, but then the pain kept like increasing, and I was like, this is weird. And I'd never like stepped off the stairs before, but I was finally like, you know what, I need to go see what's up. And I went and looked in the bathroom, and I had these like big like lines going to my pupil, but within like 24 hours, they just like were the whites of my eyes were basically completely red. And between that and the edema, and I was just freaked out because I'd never done this shit before, and then my weight was just going up. I think I was just like, I'm not ready for this yet. Like, I want to take some time, kind of iron out my health, and then see what the deal is about moving forward. And I get off that prep, and I don't really stress or like have regrets because I've had a lot of bad things happen in my life that have led me to better. So, but like, I will say, like, if knowing what I know now, I never would have dropped it. There was a lot of shit I could have done to stay in it, but it was sort of meant to be because basically, I pull out of that prep. I want to say it was like 3 weeks out. And within, I want to say like a week and a half, I'm like 255. And I've been trying to make 212. And then that's when I was like, you know what? Like, I don't think classic's the move, And so I started, getting the mindset, like, I want to be an open bodybuilder, and I probably would have gone straight to that. But when the pandemic kicked off, that was when I took my first, like, I tried to do full PCT the first time just because I told you I had been nervous. And so I wanted to like really make sure that everything went back to normal and stuff. But I did that right around the time that the gyms closed. And so it was just not smart. And then my appetite went down, all this stuff. So I basically just like had this killer transformation, and then like basically lost like 80% of it within those first couple months of COVID. But we eventually got access to like a backyard gym, started working out over there. I kind of got back on my horse, and I ended up, I wanted to prep, but I wasn't ready to go open yet. So I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm a little too heavy for classic, but I'm not that big right now. Like, I'll just go do, I'll go try men's. And then I did that show at, I did a local show at 230. And funny enough, that was my first time competing, as an enhanced athlete. And I told you I got second on my first show as a natural athlete. I got fifth at a local show in men's physique enhanced, having gained, I think, 35 pounds of stage weight. And I kid you not, it was I think it was the Fairmont in Austin. I was really sitting there after the show was done. I was like, I'm gonna go jump off this shit. Like, I was livid, I just never, like, it was worse than my worst expectations. Like, I was tripping about getting like second or third, like, oh shit, I hope I don't fuck up and not win. I got damn fifth. I barely got brought up for first call outs. And that was definitely a key humbling moment. They were qualifying 5 that year because of COVID, so I lucked out. I went to North Americans a week later, and I actually got fifth again out of like 25 guys versus at the local show. So that helped my confidence come back up a little bit. Just getting in the first call out. I did come in a little too big for the local show, and tightened up a lot in those next 5 days going to Pittsburgh. And so I liked my look there. I did pretty well, but like that local show, there's not a show I think about more than that one, to this day. It's the worst show I ever had, and that's probably the only show I ever really sit there and think about. And that experience is what really drove me, I think, to kind of take it to that next level where I started to really see some dramatic change. And that off season, I competed at 219 in Pittsburgh, or checked in at 219, and I got up to like 283 within 7 weeks of that, and pretty much just knew at that point that it's open now, And so I did one more local show last year. I got the overall, for whatever that's worth. It was just supposed to be kind of like a pit stop for USA's last year to see, or really just to run back through posing. Cause I was like, I haven't been on stage and done like classic or bodybuilding style posing, since 2019 at this point, since I did men's the last year. And so I was like, I was 3 weeks out. I was like, I just want to go through the motions and kind of, get comfortable posing, just, re-familiarize myself with being on stage. And, I won overall there. I liked my look. Obviously I wasn't in, full shape yet, but, I ended up changing coaching personnel after that one. And so my new coach advised me to wait on USA's. So I just said, okay. And then ever since then, it's just been long off season. Right now, I'm not going to commit to anything, but we're looking somewhere around like summer next year right now. But really just the main focus right now is just get bigger. I'm not thinking too much about shows and stuff like that. I see everyone competing and I get excited and want to go up, but right now I'm just trying to stay focused on adding size and making sure that we're very ready, when that time comes.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Now, from your Instagram, I gathered your current coach is Matt Jansen. Is that correct, Patrick?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So I've had a lot of his athletes on. I want to ask you, first of all, it kind of makes sense, but from your perspective, why did you choose Matt? And when you reached out to him, because obviously you haven't competed much, what was that first interaction like in terms of like you reaching out to Matt to have him coach you when you haven't really done a whole lot of competing? Did he just kind of see that potential in you? Would you just walk us through maybe that conversation? And I want you to.
Yeah. So, I told Matt this on the phone when I called him. So I got linked up with him by Justin Mahaley. He's a big coach from town, a good friend of mine.
Been on the podcast. Yep. Great guy.
Yeah. And so I'm going to say he's been on a lot of podcasts, I was like, he's got a big podcast, but yeah, so he's, he knows everybody, right? He'd worked with Matt previously. And, I kind of asked him, just like, hey, you think you can link me up with this guy and see if, he might want to work. And so he gave me his number and we got on the phone and I explained, kind of the situation to him. And, he did say he wanted to wait for a later show, but that he was down to work together, put some time in. And so we started, and then I just, I had just financial kind of personal stuff going on where I just felt a little checked out, because I told you I had a really good off season going from men's physique into bodybuilding. Like I did everything perfect. Like I really put in work. And after that show I did that summer, like, various times, kind of late last year, early this year, I just had some other shit going on that was pulling me away a little bit. And, Matt being Matt, I didn't want to waste his time. So I started with him and then I pulled back, and then now we're back working together again. But, I told Matt when I got on the phone with him, just like, and I think a lot of people, especially that do open, would say this, in my situation, that are still kind of amateur and on the come up. It's like, that's like the type of coach you dream about having. He's made legends, Nick, Dallas, Brett's on his come up, Charles, all those guys. A lot of his amateurs, are recent pros, look really incredible. And just what I like the most about Matt is, I think every coach at the highest level can get their guy in great shape, and, Matt don't miss on that. But what really stood out to me about Matt was how much his athletes change between preps. Those are the guys that you really see look kind of unrecognizable from one show to the next. Whereas, I wouldn't say there's another coach I've seen consistently have guys just get bigger and bigger and bigger that fast, like in front of everybody, so that was really the biggest allure for me, because I think I have a great shape once it's filled out, to be very competitive, at even the highest level. But I do need a lot of size and thickness to get there. I'm kind of still that longer, lankier build, more that, athlete type of build, versus being like real stocky and full. So I have to put on a little extra size. And then I'd say too, I haven't competed against, too many super heavies really before, but it's my understanding. I think I'm on the taller end for him, and so just yeah, it's just more size and weight that's got to be put on. And I got to a point where I did a lot of it by myself, but I was like, any gym rat can get themselves up to 250, if they know, a little bit of something. But being 300 pounds takes a whole different level of knowledge, direction, dedication, etc. So I figured there was no one better for the job than him. And then beyond that, just he's so easy to work with. He's very just relaxed, and like he the thing that I noticed about him too that was unique is that I feel like listens to his athletes more than other coaches that I've seen, and that's not to say that he's driving the bus 100%, but anyone that coaches understands all athletes are unique. And if you have a little context that about yourself from previous preps and stuff, that can be valuable info before they have to go figure it out. A lot of coaches will hear you say that type of stuff and be like, nah, that can't be, because it doesn't align with what they've seen before. But he's very open-minded to trust that what you're saying is legitimate. Random example, like the Master on it makes me hold water in my legs. I don't know why. 10 different brands every single time. Just my legs get spongy. I don't know what's up with it. And everyone I tried to explain that to before was saying, oh, it's a hardener, check your source. It's a hardener, check your source. And he was the first person that I told that. And then he's just like, oh, like maybe that's just, you just don't respond to it that well, and took me at my word. And I was like, so that was kind of a culture shock. I think especially in bodybuilding, it's such a hardcore sport, so it's nice to have someone that's, authoritative and knowledgeable, but also has like a listening ear and can hear you, and get your feedback and stuff. So just all around great guy to work with.
Yeah. So what are you focusing on right now? Obviously getting bigger. Is your goal to get up to 300 pounds then before you start cutting down to compete?
I love saying that. It's I mean, it'd be cool. I'm kind of childish in that aspect. I love just the big numbers and the, all that shit. I still have a lure for that. But at the end of the day, it's like your scale weight don't really matter. It's more a look I have in mind than a scale weight. And two, it's really more about getting weak points improved. I might not even need to weigh that much more, but like, I got real good quad sweep. If I'm facing the camera, if I'm at profile, it sucks. They're kind of flat. My triceps are, they don't jump off my elbows. My lateral head's not that big. I could add a lot of pec, upper chest thickness. I'd say triceps too in a lot of poses just are kind of a weak point that I really want to work on. Hamstrings too, so there's just a lot of spots I look at that I see could be better, and it's like, you're competing, you go to USA's, North Americans or whatever. It's like, these guys don't fuck around, and you're spending a lot of money to be out there. And so it's like, could I have rushed it sooner and swung for the fences and, pray for a perfect peak that puts 15 pounds on me overnight? Yeah, sure. But it's like, I'd rather be in a situation where I can comfortably come in and feel pretty confident, that I'm going to be the guy that, walks out with the card. So I'm down to wait if that's what it takes.
What's kind of like your current training split? What's your kind of training philosophy for yourself, Patrick?
So I'm going off Matt's right now. With occasionally I'll like my thing is I don't like to just set a schedule and just do it, because different demands happen to your body at different paces. So like sometimes I'll switch the order of the days or something like that. Or like, I have a hamstring and back day, for instance, and sometimes I'll just delegate that back stuff to back day, stuff like that. But, for me, and this is where, I'm a little out of my element, taking direction from someone else on the lifting. But like I said, a guy with a pedigree like that, you just fucking listen, at the end of the day. Prior to that, I would say I was pretty basic, honestly. Heavy compounds, 2 or 3 exercises, follow with more isolated, smaller muscle groups. And really, I just have a passion for lifting heavy, honestly. Form and control matter, and I keep a pretty, tight handle on all that stuff. But I also personally, I'm not huge on like, tons of intensifiers, and, I don't like doing something with 4 plates on it that I could do with 6 plates on it and still move pretty good, so that's a battle, that we've had to have a little bit. But, like I said, at the end of the day, I'm a coach as well. And so I understand what makes a good athlete, and the process works best when you just let the coach be the coach. So
Why don't we talk about coaching and personal training for yourself? What are some things maybe that you've learned as you've been able to coach other people and train other people that you can maybe just words of wisdom share with us?
Oh, how do you mean exactly? Pardon me.
So just like, as you've gotten into personal training, as you've coached people, like maybe what have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about other people? What have you learned about, maybe just life in general, right? As you interact with people all the time, there's always things that we're learning. So are there some things that kind of stick out in mind as you train and coach people that maybe you've learned, or how to maybe listen to people better or instruct people better, things like that?
Yeah, I think, it's funny. We started this conversation by, digging into, the past and stuff like that. I think one thing I've really learned is that people see themselves through the lens of what they saw themselves coming up a lot. And it can be hard to shake that. Well, the biggest example I can think of is I train a lot of people who are in very good shape that'll surprise me by telling me, like, you know, we're getting in better shape now, but before I even met you, I was actually much fatter than that. And they'll show me an old picture, I can't even recognize them.
Mhm.
And it's like, you know, they look great now. It's maybe 10 years ago or 20 years ago, but on some level, they never really shake it. And so I think that's added a layer of empathy for me, not only with clients and stuff like that, but also with other, bodybuilders. Maybe that's something that would surprise, people that don't compete about us. It's like, in the back of my mind, I'm not gonna lie, I still look in the mirror every day. I'm like, man, you're skinny sack of shit. You need to go eat some food. Like you're skinny, you're small and skinny. Like I'm always thinking that. Like I said, I trained this one guy, damn near looks like a bodybuilder. He's just like a attorney, he's just a lifestyle guy. But I think he said in his like late 20s, he was like, about 60, 70 pounds heavier. But the guy still does I think 60 minutes of cardio every day, 7 days a week, doesn't take off. No need for it at all. But he's still doing that, and it's just because that mindset's still in there. So yeah, I think it helps you have a little more empathy for people. Understand that not everyone's as strong as they look. Everyone doesn't feel as good about their appearance as they look, and I'm more into competing. Coaching. I'm not really a critic. But I think for fans of the sport who are watching this, it's like, some people are pretty hard. Some people are pretty hard on these motherfuckers, man. And they're not as like, just because they look good now doesn't mean that that's really how they feel about themselves. And so I think that's an important thing to understand. And then just what else? I mean, really, I think that's about it. Every individual is different. Aside from that, I couldn't paint with too many broad strokes. Just some people have the guts and the willpower to go make a change. Some people aren't there yet. And actually, if I had one more point to bring up, I would say that a lot of people are both. I've seen some people really like be a better version of themselves and it comes out and they're perfect for 3 or 4 months and then just kind of slip back in, And so it's like, I guess just understanding that even people who can go out there and kill it are human sometimes too, and they don't always got it. And just because someone's not got it and not on their horse right now doesn't mean that they're not capable of being that. So, yeah.
Perfect, man. So in terms of like nutrition and stuff, are you at a point where you're just kind of slamming down food, or does Matt have you eating some pretty specific foods? How does that kind of look currently?
Yeah. So, Matt has me eating more fat than I've ever eaten in my entire life. That was probably the biggest change from previous diets that I've had. It's just like an absurd, like more than I would ever consider. Like I think that's what changed when I saw what he was giving me was like what I thought a heavy clean diet is. Like I'm talking, I want to say my breakfast had like 60 grams of fat in it. And it's like I got guys that are granted, they're probably like 180 and in prep, but I got guys eating that in a day, and it's like I'm eating this for a meal. And I think it just really opened my eyes to what it really takes to move the needle once you're at a certain point. Cause like I said, it's like it's easy getting to 250. You don't need structure. It's like here, if you're not doing that shit every day, like that scale's not gonna move. And if you take a week off, you might lose 10 that you spent 2, 3 months gaining. Excuse me. But yeah, so I think just seeing what he writes up just shifted my whole perspective on how much you really got to push the food and really how much of being a bodybuilder is about like you got to eat as hard as you lift. And I'd say that's more the struggle for me. I love training hard, but I got my days where I'm just fucking sick of eating food, honestly, so that's why like prep's usually easier for me because I'm like tired of eating all this shit all year long. I'm like, thank God I can like chill out a little bit and drop it. I'll go do some cardio and get lean and eat just a civil amount of food for once. Um, so yeah, I think that's a little humbling too. Just realizing how hard you have to work at just the eating side of it. Because yeah, if you take breaks, it's like I've been through it. You stop eating that, finishing that last meal or whatever, and it's like you're not going anywhere. And you might lose progress that you spent a while making. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think Hunter Labrada here within the last several months came out with a video on his YouTube about having all these shakes every day just to get the calories down. I know Brett Wilkin does something similar at times, and you'll listen to these top level bodybuilders, and they're definitely talking about how difficult it is to push the food, but then they all say
yeah.
it's a very important part of the game, if not more important than anything else. So as you kind of progress within bodybuilding, Patrick, and you're still pretty new to the game, as you said. What are a couple things that maybe you know now that you can maybe share with some of the younger listeners that are just getting into bodybuilding? Maybe they're thinking about going the enhanced route. However you kind of want to take that, but I'd love to kind of get some of your advice, words of wisdom for some of the younger listeners that are thinking about bodybuilding.
I got a lot of advice for the younger listeners.
Good, let's
And
hear it, my man.
I still am one, but just and I'm sure I've been this dude at some point, but I just see all the time all these kids that are just barely starting, just like, and even people I've coached, they're like, they'll throw out the phrase like my pro card, like this is the gym where I'm gonna work out to get my pro card. And I'm just like, just lose the entitlement and just shut the fuck up and do the work. Honestly, I'm so sick of seeing, like I said, 190-pound kids that look, better than the kids in their, that they went to high school with and shit. They're a big man in high school, and then they're coming out talking about being pro or being Olympian or some shit like that, and that would be my biggest thing that like I see, because I don't know, I don't get in other people's business too much. Honestly, I told you I'm kind of secluded from what other people are doing, in bodybuilding, besides, me and my athletes and stuff like that. And actually, even with my athletes, like I try to only coach people where I like their structure anyway. So I don't program lists for most of my bodybuilders. For lifestyle people, stuff like that, of course, they need the help. That's what they're signing up with me for, but I just do nutrition and protocol, for most of the bodybuilders. I let them do their own things on lifts. So I'm not in other people's bubble too much where I could have too much to say, but that's the one thing I know I do see on social media is just a bunch of kids that are just not the work's not aligning with the talk, be more patient, get your damn blood work. I've lost good athletes. That's just like, I want to put them on prep, but I need blood work, but they'd rather, just put their head in the sand and rip some more D-ball, and then we're not prepping, so it's just like, I don't know. I think training and food comes first, and that's something I fell victim to that for sure. Like when I first started being enhanced, cause it's like, I feel like the first cycle, everyone's scared shitless. Like their health's gonna, or like they're gonna die or whatever. And then it's like, once that fear is gone, you go a little too far the opposite direction. Where it's like, this shit ain't so bad, just let's run it up. Let's see how much I can fit in my body without killing myself, and so I've been up that route too. But that was actually one of the things that really humbled me starting with Matt was we kind of cleaned out the system a little bit, but then he's putting me eating this food that I've never really eaten before. And I was like, I look at my best, and that was really what got me out of that, I think, was when I started with Matt, which is so funny, because people act like he's out here just fucking just, shoot motherfuckers up and shit. It's like he put me on less than I'd taken in a long ass time. The least I'd taken in a long ass time and just fed the fuck out of me. And, it's not as exciting until you start seeing, you don't gain 15 pounds in a week and then flatline, but you get that rock steady 2 pounds a week, and it looks a lot better too, so that was definitely humbling for me. And I don't know, it shifted my mindset on everything a lot. And if you really think about it too, it's like all hormonal adjustment does at the end of the day is like optimize your nutrient partitioning. Like if the nutrients aren't there, that's the actual fuel for the muscle. Like there's no stronger drug than the literal fuel that you're burning, you know, for both output and for, you know, growth. So, yeah.
Love it, man. I want to ask you, you've kind of said this a couple of times about being a little bit more secluded and out of like maybe the bodybuilding bubble. Is there a specific reason why you're like that, or is that just maybe how you are naturally?
No, it's just how. No, I'm like real social with people. You know, like I know like all the people in the local Austin scene. They're all like cool as shit. You know, so everyone's my buddy, but I don't like talk shop with them too much. You know what I mean? Like the training's kind of just like me and myself and something I like to do on my own. You know, and I love it. I just don't love talking about it that much. Kind of bores me a little bit. You know. But like I said, a guy like Matt or something like that, you know, someone that I'm planning on, you know, coaching me, stuff like that, you know, I'll talk with them, but it's like, I'll probably know, I don't know, 500 to 1,000 bodybuilders, pretty decent, you know, and I just don't got time to, and I already do it for a living. I'm doing it with clients. I'm doing it with athletes. So it's like, I kind of have to keep it special for me a little bit and not take the fun out of it too much. You know, if you dissect too much of it, I think it gets a little, you know, it can be a little much.
I hear you, man. I hear you. What do you like to do outside of bodybuilding, training people, coaching? Do you have anything you like to do for fun, or is this kind of your life 100%?
Not lately, man. I mean, like, I'm like family oriented type of dude. It's funny, I'm single now, but you know, I was in a pretty long term relationship, and so I just like, you know, work, come home, you know, burn something, and just, you know, chill with the girl or whatever, you know. So, but I don't know. I told you, I warned you before you started. I'm pretty boring, you know, outside of bodybuilding. So I used to be really exciting, you know, but I kind of like being a square a little bit more. So just work, train, sleep, smoke, chill. You know, that's about it.
That's cool, man. You do a great job of conversation on the podcast. We've been going for almost 45 minutes. So man, you're doing good, but that's kind of what you got to do to be a great bodybuilder. It's kind of just live in that box, as Jay Cutler said, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna wrap it up here. I want to touch on a couple more quick things if you don't mind. Patrick, what's your do you have a long-term goal for bodybuilding? Is it first of all get a pro card? What do you think about when you're just chilling about bodybuilding in terms of the future, or do you not even really think about all that?
Yeah, I keep it. I pretty much keep it private between me and my coach and loved ones. And it's not that I think there's anything wrong with it, but it's just the speak it into existence thing has just gotten abused. I mean, you know, I think it was Conor McGregor. There's that video where he's, you know, a 19-year-old talking about being 2-belt world champion or whatever, and he did it, and that's great. You know, cheers to him. But it's like every asshole with the TikTok is trying to speak it into existence, and they're spending, you know, 45 minutes of their gym time, you know, taking selfies and filming, you know, little funny little videos and not really hitting the weights that hard, you know. And that's, look, I'm a shameless self promoter, you know. I got Instagram and all that shit, but it's like just do the work first, and then you can take all the pictures you want, you know. But so I don't know, just like I've seen so much of that shit. I try to keep my goals just like just shut up, and hopefully I do some of them and then I'll have to say them. So
Hey man, I respect that. Okay, so it looks like the gym that you're at right now, I'm assuming it's where you train out of, is called Eclipse. Where's that located?
this is my supplement sponsor actually. So like you know, and the guy running it, he's just cool as shit. Like he just loaded this place up with like arsenal strength and all this stuff just for fun, just so we could kind of hang out over here. So this is my main home base, is Factory Gym. They're pretty new, and they are sick. Like Austin didn't really have a clear cut like bodybuilding mecca before Factory. And you know, it's all Arsenal, it's all Prime Fit. Like every competitor from town is going down there and training. Like I live like 45 minutes away. It's actually a little south of Austin, but I take a long ass trip to go train there. You know, because it's like you're gonna work hard no matter what, but that equipment is just a little bit better. Where it's like, you know, you'd be foolish if you care that much about the sport to not take the extra drive and, you know, train on better stuff that's going to give you a little more return. But no, this is just home base. You know, we just box up subs, send them out, stuff like that. So
All right, awesome, man. All right, well, Patrick, I really appreciate you coming on, man, chopping up with me for a little bit. Before I do a quick outro, if you have any final thoughts, any final words, any sponsor shout outs, any type of stuff like that, why don't you also share your Instagram with us? The platform is yours, and then I'll do a quick outro, and that'll be a wrap.
sweet. So sponsor above, Eclipse Labs, got pretty much everything you might need. So check their website out. I link it a lot on my Instagram. It's at the illest PD. And then Besides that, man, I think we pretty much covered it all. But most of all, thank you for having me. And we chopped it up about this a little before we started, but I do appreciate you having this just because bodybuilding is a great sport, game, whatever you want to call it, and the coverage is pretty limited as far as actually diving deeper than what you see on stage. And so I told you anyway, most of us are pretty just squarely into bodybuilding. So thank you for helping us kind of be a little less flat, and kind of get under the surface a little bit.
Of course, man. No, it's my pleasure. And if somebody wants to touch base with you in terms of coaching, is Instagram the best way to connect with you then?
My biz on there. Yeah, so just DM me.
Excellent. All right, Patrick, I appreciate your time, man. All of you who are tuning in to another episode of Behind the Muscle podcast, I just want to say thank you so very much. If it wasn't for all of you, the podcast wouldn't exist. As we wrap up this conversation with Patrick today, just a couple quick favors I would ask of all of you. If you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button on YouTube. That's really important because I release all the episodes first on YouTube, and then I'll distribute them to the other podcast platforms. So if you want to stay on top of all the Behind the Muscle podcast episodes, make sure you are subscribed to BTM on YouTube. And then one other favor, please take this episode with Patrick, share it on your Instagram stories, tag Patrick, tag Behind the Muscle, so that we know that you listened specifically to this episode and found great value in it, in which I know you did. And then finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.